Hello and welcome to this CodeBuddies.org live code hangout. Today we're going to be starting a new open source project with Django, and it's essentially a quick start Django project, so that when we create new projects with Django, we'll have some basic things already in place, namely a custom user model, login and logout pages, and perhaps a sign-up page with an authentic or a sign-up flow, but I'm not sure if we'll get to that status. And one of the ideas of this project is not to be too opinionated, not to make too many assumptions about the needs of the downstream projects. But I am finding that at least for login and logout, there is some boilerplate, and creating a custom user model is part of that, and I'd like to avoid that going forward. So we have a project here on GitHub, and we're going to look at creating a custom user model, and we're going to follow an article here by Will Vincent, and we might get to sign up view and flow, but I'm not sure if I want to commit that to this boilerplate project. It might make sense though. And we're going to use Bootstrap 5, so I've got some reminders here to install this crispy Bootstrap 5 to make our forms nice, particularly the login and logout form, and give us an overall framework to create a landing page and navigation. So that said, let's get started. I've got this code cloned here locally. Not Flutter. I've been working with Flutter, but I'm going to probably use Poetry. So Poetry is going to create a PyProj YAML for us. And let me just double check. There's another article here. If I come over to this, Simple is Better Than Complex is an excellent blog by Vitor Freitas. I've learned quite a lot. They have been publishing, well, not so much recently, at least by the look of it. They've been on hiatus every once in a while, but this might be an important one to read about. But what we're looking for is an article on creating production-ready. I mean, this is pretty recent. Django project. I'm just going to see what dependencies they include. It would be good to split out the environments, but I'm not going to be too opinionated here. Let's check out the requirements. And I'm deviating a bit. So I'm not using pip directly. I'm using Poetry. I will try to include a requirements text for people who just would like to use pip. I will need to do this in a moment. Yeah, might as well. All right, so let's see. We're not going to commit to using any Postgres or anything. I'll leave it at SQLite. And we're going to be using Django 4. So I'm not sure. I think I'll just take in whatever the time zone handling library that Django 4 defaults to it. They made some changes relating to time zones recently. I think this might be the right one, but and I won't commit to this anything related to databases for now. It's just going to use, as I mentioned, SQLite, but we're going to bring in Django, and we'll use black coverage. Flake 8 might be good. ISort. This might be handled by the, well, let's go for it. Might be handled by the code editor. We might go into the Django debug toolbar. This is good for now. Simple is better than complex, less is better than more. Great, so now we've got a PyProj toml. I'll just create a branch. The initial project structure. And so this is a standardized way of defining project metadata, including dependencies, this PyProj project.toml. And Poetry aligns with that. I think it'll start to emerge and become more popular in the Python ecosystem as time goes on. But this looks pretty good. So we'll just commit that. Now I can say poetry shell. And oh, one other thing is in poetry I wanted to create a virtual environment in the project. I think that's a little bit easier. There's a configuration for that. There we go. So essentially you want to create all right, so I need to pass this config. Oof, what's this? There we go. So just a typo there. And there's poetry.toml virtual. There we go. All right, so now I can I create poetry shell. Okay, so it did revert back to this. By default, Poetry puts them in your home folder in a cache directory, however you say that. I speak English and I don't know how to speak English. And virtual envs. So I don't really like that. It's okay, but I have a get ignore rule, and I think it's conventional to keep virtual environments in project directory, similar to node modules or something like that. So we'll go ahead and remove that. For virtual environment, I'm not opposed to that idea altogether, although I could probably configure that globally. Well, I did want to say that in local context so that we create this poetry toml with this configuration flag there. So create, oh, not init. Create a virtual environment. There it goes. Now we got all our goodies there. This is very conventional. .vn to the point where the default get ignore, the Python get ignore from GitHub includes virtual environment. See if I can read it. But here we are. All these different, I guess, conventions people are following. But here's ours. Good. And the reason that's helpful is because, for example, Virtual Studio Code knows to look for Python environments in these conventional places, whereas it has some little bit of problems picking up poetry virtual environments, which are standard Python virtual environments, but when they're in the home directory. So now let's see. When I create a Python file, Virtual Studio Code will know where to look for the Python. I think kernel or engine or interpreter. So there we go, here's this. So all of these are installed just by virtue of these three dependencies. Let's check our revision control. Virtual environment in the project. So initial development dependencies. This should work. Yeah, right, everybody's authenticated over there. Good. So now we've published the branch. We'll create a pull request. So I'm just going to give myself a few reminders. Real checklist. Add custom user model. We'll probably need a static welcome page. Something along those lines. We've got this first one done. Now we'll scaffold the initial project, which is actually over here. So we've got poetry configured. And if I just run the well, let's see. Run Django. Poetry add in Django. this Django element here. Let's see. I think if I name the project core, it'll. Actually, I think that's not too bad of a structure or source or something like that. It's kind of conventional. Because then you can have project and docs and these might go into the project directory as well, but let's go forward. Oops, Django 4. Initial project. Yeah, it's just a kind of preference of mine, but this core is like not quite a Django app. It's more like configuration and things like that. URLs. Was the settings. So when I named it core, it just put everything in its right place. Cool. So essentially, I can just migrate. Oops. Oops. On the server, copy it because Firefox is my default browser. There we go, we got a Django project. Push these changes up to GitHub. Okay, at this point I'm going to take a quick break and grab a fresh cup of tea. All right, let's see where we are. So at this point, our URL patterns from our core URLs contain only the admin. So we can type like password. Good, and we have default groups and users. So now the next thing is we're going to create the custom user model and then login log out workflow. And since I've already created a super user, we've already populated the default user model with one entry. We will just drop the database and recreate it. And I don't want to make too many assumptions about downstream projects, whether they use a username field or not. I am intending to use this scaffold for an upcoming project, but I'll make those specific decisions in the project itself. So I think we're going to follow this William Vincent tutorial here, except we're going to use Django 4. And we're going to use this abstract user class just inheriting from the default Django user model. We're going to create an account app. I think this is a nice choice here. So let's go ahead and do that. And we're going to register the account app with our project. And I shouldn't have migrated those, but it's easily fixed, easily remedied. So, use abstract user, but gives us more default configuration. I like that. We've installed the account app, and we'll use this auth user model. I'm going to call it just user. Account app. And let's create the custom user model. Before we register it. So accounts. Django DB model. abstract user. Now, I'm not sure if you need that pass if you're going to do. These methods and things like that. That's kind of strange, but okay. I guess under method. Let's see if I go to that. All right, so it doesn't come with a string method. Okay. I think this is okay. You've got a class with a method you need pass. All right, so look at our imports in there first. So I need to import the user model. And we've had some confusion there. I think there's a way you can, there's like a decorator for this. Let's check that out. Make the accounts migrations, create the model user, and we need to actually register that user really quick in our settings. Here. All right, let's run it, see if we've got any problems. I'm gonna have to log in. And there we go. Well, that's, there we go. Bad URL, I don't know, so it has changed, but looks like we got our user model registered there. Looks good. Groups. But it didn't move out of that. Okay, well. Not a biggie. I'll log in another time. I was on the fence about doing this, but we're going to need to create some login sign up and even our home HTML. So I usually would put those in this core directory, core/templates, but why not? Since I'm already following this really good tutorial, I'll just continue down this path. It's not a big deal. It allows us to put some templates in a convenient directory in the base of the project. So I can create a templates, which does get a bit fuzzy because we start to mix in Django apps, Django configuration, and then template directory, but maybe it's not a big deal. I think the cookie cutter Django project's a little bit more opinionated on where they put the apps. They put them in a subdirectory, so they're all bundled together. I can see the sense in that, but anyway, I think this is not too bad of a compromise. So we're going to the templates. Here we go. Ders is empty, yes. And we're gonna put additional, or we're gonna put a value there, which takes our base directory where the project is defined and joins this templates directory. So by default, I mean, primarily we'll be using these app directories to contain the app specific templates, but since we do have a few core like global templates, you could consider them, like the home page, navigation, 404, log in, log out. Now accounts related templates, I believe, should go in the accounts project. But the base and home can live in the templates directory. And Django has some conventions about these names, so we'll follow those conventions. And later on we'll have a navigation. I might as well create it. All right. Now let me see here, this is VS Code, so I'm not going to commit that. I'll put that in get ignore. I thought there was a few here relating to IDEs. So let's actual user mode. Yeah, I think I just do this. State selected changes, then that should just... All right, so now we're gonna go through these templates. So I should have emit. So I'd like some auto completion in my Django templates for common HTML elements. So if I go to settings or preferences, I guess, and I can usually edit the settings. Essentially, what I said, Django HTML station. There we go. Yeah, so that was nice. Savings there by enabling emit. There we go. All right, so we've got our base HTML. Both. There we go. Cursor mode, double cursor mode. There we are. And we'll just call it. Well, I'll leave the title empty, don't title specified. And in the body, we want block content. Very good. Yeah, these emit helpers, these emit tags and template tags are no. I think they're. I can't remember what VS Code calls them, but they're pretty convenient. I think emits specifically for the HTML, but you also have VS Code kind of short codes, something like that. Good. So now we've got block content, which is also empty by default. And I like this convention of reminding yourself of what the block is when you're ending it. So now that we've got base HTML, all of our other items, navigation, I'll return to navigation and close git ignore. We will start with the home template. And which extends base HTML. Oops. And block. And title. This can be aligned. I don't know if people will, oh shoot, I keep reading that. Hit escape from that. We'll need to add localization to the downstream projects, probably, but for now, I'm going to leave it without. Tab. That's another in a string I got. That'd be nice. Image formatting. Cool. We'll move this to a navigation menu later. I'm just kind of typing these to get more muscle memory. As you can tell, I don't really have muscle memory on these as it stands, so maybe that's not the best way, but if I copy and paste, I'm certainly missing an opportunity to learn these a little bit better. So now we're in the login template, login. So again, extends. What's the difference between these two? Double quote. And single quote. I don't know, strong preference. Ooh, this is login. And on each page, we should have one heading level 1 before you have a heading level 2. I know that oftentimes we confuse or kind of, we use the heading levels to control the font style, but really these are semantic units. It's a little bit kind of pedantic, but these tell the user that this is the top level heading on the page. And then we can change the style independently, though, the font size. This is just, so I guess we can omit the action, but the action should be here, dot. I don't remember if dot is necessary, or if we can leave the action empty, which is what that seems to be implying, empty. Yeah, CSR. Huh, well, this is cool. Oh, yeah. Notice that. Looking good. And sign up is basically the same thing. So here I will use the copy and paste. And if I had copied and pasted, I would have little nuances that I don't quite agree with. So okay, just multi-cursor for that, but okay. So we're going to log in and sign up, and we're going to give our URLs. This is cool. So if we get an empty path, it'll render this homepage template. The URL's back there. Then more or less they're alphabetic after that. Template view, as view, template name. Would be home. Name. This could be some formatting. Not too bad. Seems a little bit. Okay, did format it to put it in double quote. I kind of agree. I like this double quote convention, but it's not super big deal. And these I don't want any typos, so I'm just gonna. I get the point of them, and they're alphabetized. Kind of interesting that it's mixing them. I need to include import here. So when we copy and paste, as long as we grok the code, as long as we understand it. It's the first time we've used include here, but it's going to bring in all these URLs from our account app, and then the Django contrib auth URLs. It's going to kind of mix them all together behind the accounts. So there could be collisions there, but we're probably we will be fairly safe here, I reckon. So we'll bring in this accounts URLs. Let's see. Doesn't quite matter, but oh yeah, base URL. Navigation will return to URLs pi register. So by this one. So then we're going to come to accounts, URLs, which isn't included in the scaffold by default. We might be, once I get a little bit of Bootstrap in here, I think it's going to be a pretty good stopping point. It's already been, going on an hour, so I'm not feeling too burnt out. Kind of excited, got the holidays coming up, a little bit relaxing, some snow outside. So let's see, really all they need is the sign up view is the only one that's omitted from the accounts. The default Django accounts package. All right, so that's cool. So this I will copy and paste. So we're going to create a view here. And because I want to grok this a little bit more. Create view, interesting. All right, so Django URL, so we've got render, but we're not going to need a render. So that's cool, we can do that. Edit. Interesting. So right there, and class-based view. Home, right? It's interesting. I wonder if the reverse lazy does. It lazy loads waits until the success before loading the template into memory, I guess. I just realized, oops, this needs to be in a string. I just realized I need to move my templates. I already did that. I got a few extra lines here. And if I look at my accounts, templates, I did create the subdirectory. Registration, account would be fine, but I think it's harmonizing with the way Django expects the templates to be organized. Now I do recall in the Western Friend project defining a few other templates. But we were using a package that gives us a registration flow. Let me double check here. So we have that's the wrong one. Accounts, templates. There's a package we use, Django registration, but it doesn't look like it has support for Django 4. But there were a few registration and these might come straight from the Django accounts views. I believe we should consider including those in there, these registration related ones. So I'm going to kind of take a look at these. Login, logged out. But we're redirecting to home, so we don't need that. But this password reset could be useful. All right, back to it. All right, what's going on here? So this is our URLs pie. Base as view. So this might be here. I see. Name is it's past the path. Cool. All right, I can fix that URLs. So that's another thing. Without copying and pasting, I wouldn't have encountered that error. So, or let's see, if I would have copied and pasted, I wouldn't have encountered that error and wouldn't have maybe learned. But so we're back to the app level URLs pi and core. Whoops, there it went. And I can fix that like that. Makes sense. Because the path basically gets the name. And did expected indentation, so I got a path. Template view as view. And then one too many parentheses. Cool. And I'll just run the server again. Reload. Look at the home page. Hello, I am logged in, so I'll need to log out. And there we go, we're now logged in. Log in, looking good. Sign up, looking good. It should work on the styling with Bootstrap. All right, this is a pretty good stopping point. I'm gonna get some tea and we'll come back and commit these changes. Very cool. So let's take a look at the code changes. Basically, the idea here is, this is taking a little bit over an hour to kind of go through and create these boilerplate code, and it's going to be a little bit longer once I get Bootstrap in. Now, granted, maybe not every project's going to want to use Bootstrap, but I highly recommend it. I'm coming from a mindset of using things that are mature, stable, and under continual development and evolution. They have a broad community surrounding them, both contributing to the code and adopting it. If you looked at several other CSS frameworks, including Bulma, Tailwind, and things like that, and I just see Bootstrap as being the mature, stable option, even though it might be kind of seeming passe or not as exciting as these other projects. But I'm not in a sort of place. I've been burnt by too many come and go projects. I see, so I don't really want to disparage any of the other projects. So certainly, make a decision that fits your particular values. There's always values in any decision, whether it's things like I value novelty, or I value excitement, or I value innovation. Those could be reasons to pick up a CSS framework like Tailwind. But the values that I'm kind of building this project are stability, maturity, longevity, and community. And I think Bootstrap really hits those, all of those, and it is innovative as well. There are continuing developments in Bootstrap 5 in particular, which we'll adopt into this project. So that's a little bit of an aside of why I'm integrating Bootstrap 5 into this kind of boilerplate project, where I've tried to keep other decisions a little bit more to the downstream project, such as the choice of database, or whether you're going to include a REST API, for example. I think Bootstrap's kind of a stable choice, and I'm going to be using it in particular. But back to what I was saying before, this project can save a few hours of time to get your new project off the ground. Because not only is there the time just implementing the code, reading through this great tutorial, but also researching and consideration time, finding new tutorial, for example. And there were several to choose from, and with pros and cons. So anyway, that's where we are. This is where we've landed on this particular set of features: custom user model and Bootstrap authentication process, Bootstrap styling. Here we are. So what do we do here? Essentially, we register home URL. I'm kind of trying to keep these commit to bit meaningful. Can I just put my cursor down? Yeah, that helps. Register home. Sign up path, then it makes sense to register. The account URLs. Oh well. Anyway. Initial sign up view. I'll give an attribution to William Vincent here because this is certainly a great tutorial, and I've purchased a couple of the books published by William Vincent. Let's take a look at those real quick. Highly recommend. Learning to type. But then reading these books and learning the name of the author. Will Vincent. Here we are. Books. Yeah, I highly recommend these 3 books if you've got a little bit of a budget. They're very well written and being updated for Django 4. Any changes that are salient, it'll save you some time and help you get to write clean and pragmatic, but also kind of conventional code. And I believe the source code for these is also on GitHub. One more thing. So let's get this. Let's add Bootstrap into navigation. A little bit of bonus time today. Let's just finish out the tutorial. Test user conclusion. Very cool. Let's go ahead and add this. Well, it's attribution, but it's also giving things. Cool. Now, I think I'll just include Bootstrap from a CDN instead of kind of copying it into the project. So let's go to project, templates, base HTML, and we will not do a sign up view today, but I will revisit this idea in the future. I think well, it wasn't significant, it was just adding flake8. All right, we'll give attribution. I lean heavily on resources. We don't have a password reset flow. All right, so I guess we're using JS deliver. All right, so now if we look at just the home page, without Bootstrap and with Bootstrap makes a difference. Right off the bat, one thing, so we'll include Bootstrap from CDN. Commit that. One thing I'm considering is wrapping this in a container, but that might be, yeah, why not? All right, let's get a Navbar up there. I don't know if that's the right placement for the container. Let's see here. Go to navigation. And navigation can get kind of large, so I just split it out by default. File. Now, what about just if I switch it to? But there's just mixed indentation that kind of gets annoying. This is all for naught because I'm going to remove most of these, but okay, it's not a big deal. Just finish that. It's actually correct. This is good. There. What does this div go to? Yeah, that's correct. Oh, this can be indented. This can be indented. And Django include, I think it's just include the template name. And it might go out of the container. Let's double check. What's the navigation like? Yeah. Kind of mixing single and double quotes, but let's see what happens if I now reload the home page. We do get a Navbar with basic stuff going on there. And so yeah, it doesn't go inside of the container. It goes outside the content container. Good. Now here I'm going to look at the Western front code. Core. Go to my core templates in this project. Well, that's pretty bespoke. This is what we need. Comes from the base HTML. No, it comes from the home page. There we are. Put this here. And this should go in the collapse. We got toggler, brand. We don't need the drop down. I'm gonna get rid of that. Unless I need a disabled link. And not doing any searcher or other things. A login form might be interesting, but a bit overkill. All right, so here's where we've got it. So we got a Navbar UL, and we want some conditional items. So there's some space here. So we'll put a log out. Button. With href. Huh. Yeah, I don't know what the href can be. Probably a log out. Here's one. And don't need that. Basically, these need. I would like this to be buttons instead of Navbar buttons. We'll look. Ooh, it's got a white space there. And these should also be in nav items, I believe. Let's do the Bootstrap docs for how you add buttons to Navbar. Forms. form. That's kind of cool. Here. I guess you can just put the button. Is there like a Navbar button class? Toggler. Button type button class. It's off canvas. It's in the form again. Navbar toggler again. Well, I guess if it's a nav item, the your tag can have the button class, and it should be as expected. Save that. So these need to wrap in nav items. Perhaps. I think we did solve this with the Western pen, which should be using Bootstrap 5. Use main menu, nav item, nav link. Huh. Maybe the nav link looks fine for whatever reason. There's no examples of that. Oh wow, this forms already look pretty good too. Not much ado. So that just worked. I'm glad for that. Now I would like to place them to the right. We'll look at that one thing at a time, each thing in turn. This should be wrapped into something. Let me just remove it. Well, overall looks good. Less is more, kind of keep it simple. Simple is better than complex. Very cool. We want to introduce the reset password flow for now. Not in this live coding session. May come back to it later, but it's been an hour and a half. So I think it's a good stopping point. We could take a look at this crispy Bootstrap 5 to see if it makes a meaningful difference to our forms, specifically login and sign up. So one last thing, one last detail. Format that whole thing though. But for now I'm going to keep the formatting consistent. We won't commit any of this, I'm just going to test it first. So then I think I'm not going to work on floating fields, although that's a pretty nice feature. I think we just pass it to Crispy, if I recall correctly. Yeah. Should have a little bit more documentation here, or a link to the documentation. Alright, so log in, I'll load the Crispy forms and pass the Crispy filter. Form Crispy, do it. So that's the login, let's just check it out. Log out, oof, it's not running. Log in. Well, looks kind of nice. Without. I'll take it. Subtle. I didn't handle the button because that's outside of the phone. There we go. Yeah, rinse and repeat. I think that's a good addition. Log in and sign up. Yeah. Same thing here. Very cool. Very cool. Did that, did that, did that, did that. These are done. Crispy forms. Very good. All right, we'll do a bit of a recap. So the TLDR version of the video, so we can find that later on. Welcome to the recap of today's CodeBuddies.org live code hangout. Today we've been working on an open source project, a Django quick start of sorts. It's a minimal quick start for Django 4 and Bootstrap 5. The idea is that we oftentimes need to start a new project and define a custom user model with login and logout flow, and maybe create a static front page and navigation menu. Just doing those tasks can take at least an hour, in particular if you're unsure of how to complete those steps, you'll need to find a tutorial, so that can take a little bit of research. And essentially we're just trying to save some time. Following this Django Best Practices Custom User Model from Learn Django, published by Will Vincent, with a couple modifications. The outcome is this. We've got a Django Quick Start project with login, sign up pages. When you log in, oops, spell my own name, we can see that we get returned to the home page, and we have a logout button presented. This is also mobile responsive just because we're using Bootstrap 5 in this case. Let's just take a quick look at the code. The repo is available on GitHub. It's MIT licensed. Feel free to use it in your own projects, and any improvements are also welcome. Considering whether or not to add kind of the password reset flow, forgot password, and things like that. But in this session, I thought it was good to just stick with the initial homepage, custom user model with login, register, sign up. Let's see, sign up, sign in, and log out. Here's the GitHub pull request. I'll just read the files from top to bottom, just so you can get an idea of the scope of the changes. So we're using Python getignore, and I'm using VS Code, and VS Code has some metadata I wanted to keep out of the project. In addition, our default README, to our notes from the default README, I wanted to add thanks to Will Vincent, who created this excellent tutorial article that I followed to define the custom user model with register, login, and logout flow. Really clear, and I think following very conventional or idiomatic Django code. I'm using Poetry on the project. I like Poetry because it does improve on the pip workflow slightly. It also tries to adhere to emerging Python conventions like this pyproj. .toml we'll see in a minute. The one convention, the one setting I needed to add is to tell Poetry to create the Python virtual environment in the project, and that way VS Code can kind of pick it up right off the bat without any kind of configuration. VS Code already knows to look in these virtual environment directories, so that was good to go. We scaffolded an initial accounts app to define our custom user model and some templates and one URL for logging in and out. We registered I'm just going top to bottom, but we registered our custom user model, which we named user. This one slight deviation from the tutorial. We'll come to that in a minute. And we needed to create two forms for creating a user and changing them in the admin interface, as well as in the front end. And so we use this admin register decorator for the user model, and we registered this custom user admin with the user creation form and the edit form or changing form. And our list will display the email and username, so we can take a quick look at that. The outcome is that in our Django administration interface, we have a nice users list, and we can edit users by clicking on them and setting additional details, adding them to groups and whatnot. Add user, just reset the initial fields. So we'll come back down here. This is just part of the app scaffolding. When I created the app, essentially the accounts application, and gave it a name and set the identity to use our big auto field. So each row in the database has an identity column. Here are the user create and edit forms. It's basically just telling, we're using the default Django user creation and edit form, change form. But we're passing our custom user model in both cases and specifying the fields to be displayed. Username and email and password, I think, will be also an important one. I'm surprised we didn't have to specify that. I guess it this user creation form does that because it has to add the password field twice for validation. This is a migration auto-generated code here, and our model is very simple. We're just inheriting from the Django abstract user, so we get all the default fields, first name, last name, is staff, and everything else that comes with that. And actually, I can clean that up. The abstract user doesn't define a string property, so we have this username. So when it gets rendered into the user interface, this is interesting. It's not a good example, I suppose. But if you just pass the user in the user interface, by default it'll render this field. So the next few are some basic templates. We create a login and sign up template, and we extend the base HTML so that there's a consistent look and feel across the templates. We're using a plugin called Crispy Forms to render the forms in a way that uses Bootstrap classes and gives them a nice, little more elegant, appealing aesthetic than the default rendering. And essentially, in our base template, we have a title block that populates the title of the HTML document, and it's a content block that lets us place, in this case, heading level 1 with the form and button. Oops, I keep popping back over there. Just close that one now. You can see we're using the crispy filter on the form and our CSRF token. And that's for security and giving us the nice aesthetic. And we're using Bootstrap classes on our submit button. These login and sign up forms are basically the exact same, but just targeting different views. We don't have any tests. Our URL and the accounts is just requiring, just creating a sign up path. Everything else is sticking with Django conventions, very close to the way things work default with Django. It's just a basic scaffolding. So we created a custom sign up view in this case, using the user creation form. And when you successfully sign up, it'll just take you to the home page. And we're using the registration directory in our templates directory, like so. Each of the there's a project-wide templates directory that contains our base, home, and navigation, and there's which I've previously kept in core, but instead I think core is now sticking mainly to configuration related files, and there's app-specific template directories. So we've got accounts, templates. Django by default looks for registration related templates in a registration subdirectory. So we're just sticking with that convention where we've got our login and sign up templates. This is part of the scaffolding. Our initial settings, we needed several, most of it is auto-generated, but we included our crispy forms and our accounts app. We told Crispy to use the Bootstrap 5 template pack. This is all generic. We added this base templates directory so that we can put some kind of global templates like the home page, navigation, base HTML, all in one easy to find location, so nesting it within the core directory, which we also had to add it. I would have had to add that to this configuration. And it's still going to use the app directories for app-specific templates, but we just wanted one global directory, one additional global directory. We're just going to use SQLite. I'm not going to make any decisions for downstream projects, although Postgres is a primary recommendation. But for starting, SQLite takes you quite far just to get your idea into reality. We defined a custom user model, so we're just telling Django our auth user model uses account user. And when you log in and log out to redirect to the home page. Other than that, this is pretty static, and this is generated by Django 4, so it's defaulting to the big auto field. Our URLs, we needed to add a couple of things. We wanted to render a home template as the kind of base path. the admin URLs were already registered. We also added the accounts URLs from our accounts app, as well as the Django authentication URLs. So kind of mix those together under the accounts. For one view is defined here, the custom view for sign up, and the remaining views are defined by Django. So we're just, again, sticking close to the Django defaults. This is coming from the scaffolding. This managed pie comes from the scaffolding. Our base template's just using HTML5. I just use an emit to to create this HTML5 scaffolding. We have a HTML head title is passed, or you can override that at the template level by including this title block. We include Bootstrap 5 from CDN. I should probably consider about whether or not we're going to hard code this, or just 5.x.x would be sufficient. We defined a navigation menu in a separate file because the navigation menu can get kind of lengthy, and so it's a little cleaner to just do it as an include. We created a content block that allows you at the template level to specify what content should render in a given view or static template, and wrap that in a Bootstrap container for nice clean alignment. And then each of our other templates, again, they extend this base HTML for consistency and can override the title of the page. That'll display there in the tab, and the content. And so the home page is just very simple welcome message. Our navigation menu is a little bit more lengthy, but nothing really fancy going on here. It's just kind of a boilerplate Bootstrap 5 navigation menu. We specified the title and a conditional to check if the user is logged in. And I might end up floating these to the right. I'm not sure. That might be a slight improvement I can add. Maybe off stream, I'll just do that really quickly before closing out this pull request. But essentially we created, in the case they're authenticated, a logout button that uses the default Django logout URL and redirects you to the home page. There's no real page that renders there. It's just a view that redirects and clears your authentication token, I suppose. But in the case you're not authenticated, we want to give options to log in or sign up, and those are named URLs. And finally, last but not least, the project metadata. We scaffolded it with Poetry. It's version 0.1.0 of the Django Quick Start. And MIT licensed Python 4, Django 5 using crispy forms. Did I say Django 4 or Python 4? Python 3.9, Django 4, Bootstrap 5. Using Black and Flake 8 for the development code formatting, iSort for sorting the imports, and that's about it. So hopefully it'll save some time on your projects, and if you've got any suggestions, feel free to open an issue here on GitHub. I'm glad to take a look at pull requests as well for suggestions for improvement, keeping it fairly generic. All right. Well, again, this has been a CodeBuddies.org live code hangout. If you're wanting to get involved with this or similar projects, stop by CodeBuddies.org. Have a great day, and thanks for watching.